My name is Samantha, a 34-year-old stay-at-home mom. I live with my husband, Asher, and daughter, Amelia. After my father-in-law died of illness a few years ago, I moved to the neighborhood of my parents' house 3 years ago at the suggestion of Asher, who was worried about my mother-in-law, who lived alone. At that time, my parents' house was also nearby, so I only thought that it would be convenient to go back and forth between each other's parents' homes. I have 2 problems. One is my husband's repeated infidelity. Asher is a person who cannot refuse when he is approached, and he can be very fickle. I've had that happen since we were dating, but when I proposed, he vowed that from now on, he would only look at me. Maybe it was my fault for choosing such a husband, but at that time I believed him. Still, Asher didn't change anything after marriage. Most of them were not direct, such as exchanging messages, but I experienced one time in the past that I was really on the verge of divorce. At that time, Asher was deeply remorseful, and considering that I still had feelings for myself and that my daughter, who was still small at the time, had grown, I decided to stop the divorce and choose to rebuild. However, every time I see Asher, who still doesn't let go of his smartphone even for a moment, I wonder if he is still in touch with someone. The second is the presence of my mother-in-law who lives in the neighborhood. Since I moved in, if she has time, she would visit my house without contacting me, and she would say something sarcastic to me and leave. At first, I tolerated it, thinking that she might be lonely, but as the months passed, things escalated. By the time I realized that she was such an insane person, it was too late. She does as much as she wants, such as ruining the ingredients I was preparing and even being stingy with the contents of the garbage bags I had put together. Even if I complain, Asher just laughs and won't talk. Moreover, my mother-in-law comes out every time I have an argument with Asher. It seemed that every time Asher and I had a fight, he would tell her off and get her on his side. In the past, when we were in a mess due to Asher's affair. Well, I don't think he'll ever want to go back to a wife like you who is always angry. I couldn't believe my ears when I heard about the fact that she was taking side with him. When insulting me, she always says things like, "I wish you could at least give birth to a boy," which are unacceptable things to say. No, it doesn't matter now, right? Every time I do that, I say to myself, oh my God. In the first place, the parents-in-law are ordinary families, and they are not good enough to need an heir. A husband who is a cheater and a mom's boy at the mother-in-law who blindly loves her son and insults me. In the midst of all the worries I have about the 2 of them, my daughter's smile is the only hope I have. I've thought about divorce many times in the past, but I'm currently a stay-at-home mom and don't work, so I'm worried about my financial situation. When I think about my daughter, who will grow up steadily in the future, I don't want to inconvenience her. Above all, I didn't want to take my father away from my daughter, who adores him, so I couldn't go for a divorce. Today, she showed me a portrait of me that she had drawn in class, and in the picture I was smiling and holding hands with my daughter. Before I knew it, she was getting so much better at it. I smiled as I watched my daughter grow. Because of her, I can still put up with it. When I patted her on the head and said, "Thank you," my daughter looked happy. One day, I received a call from my mother-in-law when I was sending Asher and daughter to work and school as usual and doing housework. The message was that she wanted men to come to her house right away because she had to run some errands. Wouldn't it be nice if you come over to my house? By this time, I had developed some tolerance for my mother-in-law's unreasonable demands, so I was able to say a word or 2 back to her. Well, I can't believe you called in an old person like me. What a cold-hearted wife. I had expected it, but she exaggerated. I sigh. When I looked out the window, it was dark outside, and it looked like it was about to rain. Yes, yes, I'll be there in a little while. I said yes, and hung up. I don't know what the purpose is, but I can easily imagine that it is a chore such as the light bulb burning out as usual, or the cleaning of the bath instead. I quickly got my laundry done and changed clothes and headed to my mother-in-law. When I arrived at the house, she said, "It's late." However, he seems to be in a good mood. "Oh, don't you have a customer?" I tilt my head as I look at the leather shoes and pumps lined up at the entrance. "Oh, there's someone I want you to meet." I was more and more confused, but when I followed her into the living room, there was Asher, who's supposed to be at work, and a woman that I don't know. Moreover, the women seemed to be pregnant. "Well, sit down." My mother-in-law urged me to take a seat. "Didn't you go to work?" For the time being, when I asked the question without minding about the woman, he scratched his cheek with an awkward face. "I used my paid leave. I had something to talk to you about today, and I asked my mom to help me." "Do you mean this woman?" When I glanced over, she was peeling an orange and munching on it with a calm expression on her face. Asher, on the other hand, turned pale and trembled. "I got her pregnant, and the baby's going to be born in 3 months. She says she wants to have a baby. That's why I want you to divorce me." By the time I saw the woman, I already knew what's coming. I couldn't tell it for a long time, and in the meantime, her stomach was getting bigger and bigger. I sighed loudly at the sight of Asher sitting on the ground and demanding a divorce. "What is that gesture for?" "It is a gesture to pass his demands, and it was never an apology." Knowing this, I couldn't contain my sadness. "Didn't you think about Amelia? What were you thinking about when you were dealing with her while you were having an affair?" This is what I said to him when I was in a state of chaos due to his affair before. I told you that the next time you're about to be attacked, think about Amelia, not me. He loves Amelia so much. That's why I cried and complained that cheating would hurt not only me, but also my beloved daughter, but apparently it didn't work for him. It's not temptation, it's serious. A gentle voice interrupts between Asher and me. The woman was looking at me with a gentle smile. "Asher, you always said that I was the best, and that's why I was able to conceive the boy your mother wanted as a proof of love," she said and smiled. She said, "That's right," and rubbed her stomach. I am beyond angry and taken aback by how awful her attitude is. I could have said that in this situation. At this point, my mother-in-law, who had been silent, opened her mouth. "Well, unlike you, Nellie is young, gentle, and kind-hearted, so I'm all for your divorce." It seems that the cheating partner is called Nellie. I don't think a kind-hearted person would get pregnant with a married man. When I blurted that out, my mother-in-law seemed to be offended and glared at me. "Shut up, I'm done with you now. If you're a wife who can only give birth to a woman, get divorced and leave immediately." My mother-in-law yells at me while making hand movements as if to push me away. Asher never makes eye contact with me, and Nellie smiles confidently and strokes her belly. "I understand the divorce, I'll take Amelia's cake." I ran out of my in-laws' house as if I was being chased away. Outside, it started raining as expected. I went out with an umbrella, but the umbrella was left at the entrance of my parents-in-law's house. It was my favorite one. But that doesn't matter anymore. I dry laughed and walked through the rain on my way home. The divorce proceeded smoothly, and before I knew it, 3 months had passed. My ex-husband was reluctant to leave my daughter, but he seemed to understand the magnitude of what he had done, and in the end he agreed to pay my request and pay the desired alimony and child support. It seems that the alimony was prepared by selling the apartment where he lived. I was mentally and physically exhausted, but thanks to the lawyer my father introduced me, it took less time than I expected. What I was most worried about was my daughter's heart, but she has been smiling at me since the divorce. I guess she's trying not to worry me. For the time being, I am staying at my parents' house and she's attending elementary school as usual, but depending on the housing and my job that will be decided in the future, I will have to consider changing schools. My daughter seems to be aware of that, but I don't think she agrees. There is nothing sadder than seeing a child suffer because of their parents' selfishness. I was doing my best spending my days looking for a new place to live and work in her school district so that she wouldn't feel lonely. That's when I got a call from my ex-husband. Due to child support, I left my contact information. I answer the phone, thinking I'll just hang up the phone depending on the situation. As soon as I answered the phone, he started. The color of the eyes of the child who was born. An ex-husband who sounds in a hurry. I was taken aback by the suddenness, but I calmly replied, "You promised not to contact me unless you needed child support or anything else." That's not the case, I was deceived. I could have ignored it and hung up the call, but I was curious about the content of the conversation, so I decided to listen to the story for the time being. The eyes of the child who was born are blue, and he has blonde hair. To summarize, Nellie apparently gave birth safely the other day, but no matter how you look at it, the bloodline she was born with was not Japanese. By the way, it seems to be true that it was a boy. I had heard that he had moved in with Nellie right after our divorce, so I tried my best not to laugh. Nellie told me that he was dating several other guys besides me, and it seems that there were foreigners among them. It's unbelievable. The ex-husband is angry as if he were a victim. He continued, "That was enough." When I told her that I was going to sue her, she said she chose me because I seemed to have money. "It's too bad," he said, letting out his emotions. Not only mere ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law, but also the person who gave birth probably never thought that this would happen. Anyway, it's what he deserves for what he did and I have no mercy for it. No, you say that? I smile bitterly at my ex-husband who is surprised by my words. Did he think I would comfort him? I think it's a good match for someone who cheats, and I don't care if your eyes are blue. I'm sure he's the boy your precious mother wanted. My ex-husband was clearly upset by my words. Well, but I'm going to break up with Nellie, and I want you to get back together with me. I was overwhelmed by his insistence to remarry me, and my anger exploded at his addition. My mother should do the same. Please live in harmony with your mom, and with a lovely blonde-haired, blue-eyed baby, and if you give birth safely, I'm going to charge Nellie for cheating on. Tell her to be prepared. I told him to throw up, hung up the phone, and immediately turned off his phone. Originally, out of consideration for the unborn child, I was going to wait until Nellie gave birth before requesting compensation. This phone call, I now know that she has given birth, so I think it's just the right time. However, at the same time, the words of my ex-husband's reunion make me feel a sense of crisis. Until now, I had been looking for housing and work in the area to prevent my daughter from transferring schools, but I thought it might be better to move to a place beyond the reach of my ex-husband. That night, I was having dinner with my mom and my daughter. My father hasn't come home from work yet. When Grandpa comes home, my daughter wants to watch anime with him. My mother is also happy to say to smiling daughter, "Let's watch it with your grandma." The moment of such a gathering was suddenly interrupted by the intercom. When I looked at the screen to see who it was at this time, I saw my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law. "Amelia, wait a minute with Grandma." I left my daughter in the care of my mother and opened the front door with the chain on. At that moment, the door is pulled back vigorously and a sharp sound resounds. I'm glad I kept the chain on. When I thought so from the bottom of my heart, I heard a tisk-sking and it was my ex-mother-in-law who peeked out. Just behind her, my ex-husband is standing with a smug face. Asher boy wanted to take you as his bride again, but you refused. Asher boy, I mean my ex-husband. It seems that she has been calling him that since he was a child. Don't you know how kind Asher boy is that you have children and you don't have a chance to remarry? It's not your business. You have a new wife who gave birth to a long-awaited son, a blue-eyed, blonde-haired grandchild. Please be kind to her. My mother-in-law's face turned red at my words. If I had known she was like that, I would have put up with you. As pushing her away, my ex-husband now reaches out his hand through the gap in the front door. Samantha, I think it was really bad. I was deceived too. Let's make a happy family together this time. A former mother-in-law who screams emotionally at her ex-husband who is crying and complaining while slamming the door. As they pondered what to do with this strange situation, it was an unexpected person who silenced the two. Daddy, you always bully my mommy. When I turned around, I saw my daughter standing there with tears in her eyes. My mother rushes in from behind and keeps her daughter away from the door. My mother was holding a smartphone in her hand. My dad and my lawyer are on their way right now. It seems that she had contacted my father and the lawyer who helped me during the divorce. Amelia must have taken advantage of this opportunity to come to me. I was a little relieved by my mother's words. Honestly, it was inwardly afraid of them who seemed like they were going to break the chains and come in at any moment. Amelia, let's wait with Grandma over there. At her mother's words, my daughter shook her head in disgust. I protect Mommy. I hate Dad. Saying that, she is crying out loud. I couldn't help but cry at the sight and hugged my daughter. My ex-mother-in-law and ex-husband were stunned by the situation. The momentum of earlier had vanished somewhere, and his face was lifeless. I think my daughter's words really hit him. In the meantime, my father and his lawyer arrived, and even came to the police car. Apparently, a neighbor had reported it. Asher, my daughter will never be with you again, and if you regret what you did, this is not what you should do. You understand? Following my father, I stand in front of my ex-husband and mother-in-law. Don't hurt Amelia anymore. I will never comply with your demands. I don't want anything to do with you ever again. My ex-husband and mother-in-law grimaced, nodded, and quietly got into the police car. The lawyer said, "We will deal with it more strictly so that this kind of thing does not happen again." I bowed deeply to the lawyer who will be helping me a lot in the future, including in the matter of compensation. Later, I heard that her ex-husband eventually divorced Nellie and sued her. Nellie seems to have relied on a foreign man who was the father of the baby, but although he was able to take care of the baby, he seems to have a family and she was driven away by his wife. My ex-husband, and the wife of the father of the baby will also charge Cole alimony, and her life will be miserable from now on. I wish for the baby's happiness. The ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law seem to be living together miserably, becoming the target of rumors in the neighborhood. In order to pay child support and the rest of the alimony, my ex-husband works more overtime and works like a workhorse, but he is making a solid transfer. We moved to a place where we had nothing to do with our ex-husbands. I decided to go back to work that I had a connection from when I was single, and my daughter is making friends at her new school and seems to be having fun. I look forward to my daughter's growth and will live strongly.